Hello, everybody. Welcome back to psychiclistcross.com. And today is Tuesday, November 7th, 2023. Mr. Photon is with us again with this strange picture of a burned out car. What are we doing today, Mr. Photon? How are you?
I'm good. Good morning, Liz. So we're actually going to take another look at the Maui fires and actually also the California fires as well. This is kind of keeping in line with the video we did last week on the weather weapons and the hurricane in Acapulco. For those that haven't watched that video, we actually found that there are indeed weather weapons and they're being used against populations. So I encourage you to go back and watch that one if you missed it. And the other thing we found in there too was I found a document that actually showed that way back, even in I think it was from the 60s, a government document from the United States, they were developing weapons for specifically hurricanes, but also forest fires. And we know we've seen a lot of forest fires over the last years. Now, specifically on the Maui fires, we have some anomalies that I want to go through. So you're looking at a car. It's been absolutely melted. All those aluminum hubcaps you're seeing at the bottom, those are completely melted. And if I should actually first say I'm taking these stills from a video from someone called the Reese Report, reesereport.com, and he has a few good videos on this topic. And I basically just pulled pictures from his video. So all things being considered, definitely go and do your own research on this. And we also thank him for his research as well. So a few facts that I pulled from the video. Number one, extreme forest fires burn at a maximum of 1,500 degrees. Now, in order to, that's the most extreme that they get. And actually that is, close to the melting point of aluminum. So it does make sense. Now, what doesn't make sense is a lot of these, things that are absolutely melted, the surrounding area around them is fine. So you'll find that the trees behind and around, and on the video, he shows more of a 360 view of this stuff. There's trees sitting right next to some of these cars and even grass. And so how does a big cinder, float over and land on this car and absolutely melts it? With, in excess of 1,500 degrees. So there's many examples of this. As you can see, there's houses in the distance, they're absolutely fine. Again, you can look around. There's even cars that are intact around these cars on the video. And the other big anomaly too is that, let's see here, the glass melting. So glass melts at 2,500 degrees, which is way hotter than any forest fires that have been recorded. And again, they're localized fires that seem to discriminate between different pieces of material. So for instance, I don't know if I have a picture of it here, unfortunately, because it's more of a video, so it's hard to get, he's doing panning and stuff like that. So there's pictures on there if you watch the video where he shows metal melted, and right on the ground beside it there's wood. It's it's a little bit black, but it's not burnt to a ash where the metal is actually completely melted. So it seems to be a phenomenon that's reacting with specific materials, and especially metal and glass seems to be, you had a bad day if you were metal and glass during this fire. But if you're wood or a tree, you seem to be okay in some of these instances. So, here's another example of where you can see to the right, there's a whole truck that was absolutely burnt out, and it wasn't moved there because in the video he shows there's just a tiny little bit of char marks in the front of this building in front of the truck. And then there's cars here that supposedly haven't moved, and the building in front of it is completely untouched. And same with everything around it. So how did this truck just burst into flames and melt on its own with nothing touching around it? There's all kinds of these examples around the Maui fires, it seems. So can you like, I don't know how we're gonna. I think I want to bring in Tesla again on this one because he's just a wizard of the electromagnetic fields, and we found that he was quite useful in the last video. So can we bring in Tesla?
Yes, I have him here. Wow. Okay. Mm-hmm.
So what does he think of these anomalies where we have these cars seeming to melt and leaving no damage around the car, like to trees and stuff like that around and other materials?
Because metal absorbs heat.
Okay. But how is it that this car is melted, but trees beside it are untouched? Is this from a forest fire?
Yes. And what happens is the he's actually leaning over. I'm like, you're leaning over. He's pointing at the screen. And he's saying the trees do not absorb heat like metal. Because certain types of metal absorb more than other types of metal. Therefore, these vehicles just went up in flames because they absorb so much heat. And with, obviously the petrol, or whether they were electric, he's saying, but most of them were petrol vehicles, petrol powered vehicles. That's what caused them to like combust in this way. They absorb the heat.
Okay. Well, so here's an example of a metal building.
Mm-hmm.
Why wasn't the metal building touched or any of the area around it?
Why wasn't the metal building touched? Because it's a different type of metal. So
Okay.
he's saying the type of metal is very fragile and it's very thin, he says, compared to the building. So the thicker the building, the more that it can withstand the heat. Whereas these thin pieces of metal or thin, whatever it is that cars, I don't even know. I'm like, cars are made out of metal. I thought they were plastic. Who knows? They just combust because there's not much to them.
So what about the melting glass?
So what about melting glass? He says same principle, because the glass was attached to the vehicles. He's saying that that's how hot the vehicles, that's how much heat they absorbed. He says the fire doesn't even have to be too close to the vehicles before the vehicles automatically are picking up the heat in the atmosphere or in the area, and they're already starting, their temperature starting to rise.
Okay. Now I'm seeing a lot in this video, a lot of these cars are not next to anything that's burnt at all. So where was if these cars across these houses across the street, there's metal and there's stuff on the street here. Like for instance, there's a fire hydrant and there's different things that are metal that seem to be intact and untouched. Yet we have these vehicles that are melted. How is the fire even reaching these vehicles? Heat from the
even reaching, it's basically the heat that's causing them to go up.
So if you were a human standing anywhere near this area, you would have also been melted, or no?
If you were a human standing anywhere near this area, would you have also been melted? It's quite possible that you could have melted. It depends upon, your position, your clothing, and all sorts of things. But yeah, so he says, see, some of these, he's pointing to the screen. He's saying some of these are made with material that is very heat absorbent, and they just can't cope with that level of heat.
So I'm also looking now at a picture from the California fires from years ago, and this is on the freeway where there was no forest, and it seems like random vehicles are bursting into flames. So what does he think of this in California? Is there specific materials in those cars that are burning up and some are not?
Yes, it depends upon what he's saying to me is the percentages of, you know, what materials are used. So if you have a high percentage of a very heat absorbent material, which by the way is a lot cheaper to make things out of than using good quality materials, they just absorb the heat.
Right. Yeah. And so, I mean, I just have a hard time conceptualizing how there's no fire. Like it's the air temperature that's igniting these cars, essentially, is what he's saying.
Is it temperature? Overall, the air temperature, and then as the yes, as it's getting hotter and hotter. I mean, a lot of people in the fire, he's telling me, the people that were burned, the air temperature alone, or the magnitude of the temperature, even if they were in their houses, when it was getting closer, that actually would have killed them before the or certainly rendered them unconscious before the actual, the flames engulf the home.
Okay. All right. So there's a video circulating around of this is a video, obviously on the video here, a still frame of laser testing, and these are laser weapons, and basically there's different colors set up here, and when the laser is pointed at everything, every different color like red, yellow, green, it's able to burn through it, but then when it comes to the blue, it actually is not able to burn the blue. And this is because it's an infrared laser, I believe, and so it's like the frequencies of light cannot burn the blue color, because we're all dealing with wavelengths. Obviously, color is wavelengths, and so are lasers. Now there are some anomalies that people have pointed out, and this may be, obviously a dud, but now that we've heard what we've said, but I'm gonna go through it anyways. In the Maui fires, we have blue objects that are seemingly untouched from the fires. So here's some blue umbrellas. And we also have blue cars, whereas the other ones are like burnt out, but it's like everything is just absolutely devastated here. But why is this car fine, this blue car? We also have another blue car here. Everything is just melted around it except for this blue car seems to be fine. So I guess the assumption is that there's some sort of energy weapon or laser being used here to like target things. And, the assumption is just like in this test with the blue, they're being untouched. Can you ask Tesla if there's any truth to that? Is there any directed energy weapons being used here that are immune to blue?
Energy weapons being used there. Are there any energy weapons that were being used with regards to the fire? No, he says there were not energy weapons that were directed to Lahaina. Was there anything deliberate at all about these fires? No, it's a catalog of errors. Why is it the blue materials would be safe from the fire? Why did they not burn up? Does the color have anything to do with it? Yes, and a lot of times the color does have something to do with it.
Okay, can you ask him what it has to do with it? Why does it make it immune?
Why does the color blue make it immune? It's not as he's talking about the ultraviolet spectrum, and he's going into great detail here, and I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I wish I could just like plug him in and let him talk freely, but excuse me.
Well, my assumption is that because we saw what the lasers do here, they're using infrared lasers, and that's why it's not allowed to penetrate the blue, which makes sense to me. And I guess when I think about it in my head, if it's a forest fire, I mean, the energy is going to be also in the infrared spectrum, right? Just like you have a fire, like a campfire, it's going to be infrared. So if the infrared laser makes this, anomaly here, is it that the infrared heat from the forest fire is like negated by the blue wavelength?
Is it the infrared by the blue? That's correct.
That's very interesting. So are there examples of this like in other places where like, why don't firemen wear blue? It's my first
Yeah, really. Well, because they have to be visible and because of the blue smoke. Um, yeah, it's yeah, but that isn't that see, we're learning. I mean, we're learning stuff. I mean, it's very plausible that people have these types of questions, but you're having to get deep down into like the physics of things to understand what exactly went on. Look, I get it. I know about the land grabs. I know about, the environmental and the control. And if anybody knows anything, uh, I do, I've done quite a few readings for property developers that develop, you know, apartments and houses in various parts of Hawaii as well. And I mean, they're under heavy scrutiny from the locals, and I understand that. It's not fair to the locals, and so there's this us versus them. It's not nice what's going on in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Um, it really isn't. It's terrible. And for those of us that are in low tax areas of the country, we see it too. Not on the scale that you're seeing it because, obviously your square mileage is smaller. It's already more expensive to live there, but we see it too. People coming and grabbing up the land and paying cash, pricing out the locals, driving up the house prices. People don't make that type of money here in their jobs, but you've got other people from very high tax states moving here. I totally understand why there's so much suspicion.
Okay, so I have on my screen, I have satellite picture of the three different areas of where the fires started, and it's showing what time they started, like the ignition. They believe when the ignition started, and there's a man who is a robotics expert, and he's claiming that he has found satellites that are of CCP origins, the Chinese Communist Party, that were over top of all three of those areas exactly at the time of ignition. So he's getting his information from the NORAD tracking websites. And you can see CCP Object A NORAD CAT was over top of, I can't remember which site this is, if this is Lahaina or Olinda. So
Okay. Can I ask you, what does CCP mean?
That's Chinese Communist Party.
Oh,
so the Chinese
okay.
have satellites in orbit, and obviously NORAD from the United States tracks them. And he was able to go on their website and time it up when those exact ignitions were, said to happen. And on all three sites, he's showing that there's a CCP satellite over top of all three sites exactly at the time of ignition. So the question is, I mean, the conspiracy theory is that they have like, their energy weapons on these satellites, and so they may have helped the fires in some way.
Okay, let's probe the CCP. Do you have energy weapons on satellites? No.
So they don't have lasers?
Do you have lasers on your satellites at all? Any satellites that you have all over the world, do you have lasers on them? No. Drones? Yes. Satellites? No.
Okay, so did they have any satellites over top of Hawaii at the time of the fires?
Did you have any satellites over the top of Hawaii at the fires? Yes, they did.
And so were they surveillance?
Surveillance? Yes, they were.
Now, how did they know the fires were going to start?
How did you know that the fires were gonna? They didn't know.
So it was a complete coincidence that they had satellites on all three spots exactly when they started.
Is it a coincidence that you had these fires when they started? Yes, I think we have to understand how
Wow,
many satellites there are.
that's true.
Um,
That's true. I mean, there's thousands and there's all kinds of space junk up there. But I mean, it's quite a coincidence that they were at that exact spot, all three places. I can understand one spot, one satellite, but three satellites were over top the exact same time.
how many satellites do you have? Tens of thousands of satellites
Oh
by
yeah.
the CCP
Oh
all
yeah.
over the world. They have them everywhere from Antarctica to remote islands. They comb the world all the time. They're gathering information. They're tracking. They're looking for weapon developments, movement of weapons. Are you looking for land opportunities? No, no. They're basically tracking weapon developments. They're looking to see if there's mass movement of objects.
Or did they have suspicion that there was going to be weapons being used on Hawaii, like energy weapons or anything like that?
That's a good question. Did you have a suspicion or any inclination that there would be weapons being used on Hawaii? No.
Interesting. Okay, so these were just reconnaissance satellites. They didn't find anything interesting in their reconnaissance, anything out of the ordinary.
Did you find anything out of the ordinary in there in on the images that were being reported back from these satellites? Yes. Okay. So what was it that you found that was out of the ordinary? Well, the fires in general were out of the ordinary, and they also study fires as well. So they can direct the satellites to go where there is, a need, or if there's an earthquake, they'll go and move their satellites or move some sort of surveillance. They like to study what happens, how people respond psychologically, if there's a mass movement of people out of the area. So hurricanes as well. They like to study that sort of information, and they say that helps them prepare or be better prepared. Like, what could we do if the same thing happens to us?
Interesting. Okay.
But they have
Um,
a lot of satellites, a lot. Do you have more than the US? No. The US has millions of satellites up there.
oh yeah, absolutely. Another anomaly that was seen earlier on in the year was these incidents of green lasers seeming to be shone down from the sky. This thing was in January 2023. And people are also kind of weaving this into this narrative that this were some sort of like geo tracking to maybe mark out what areas would be targeted, in for directed energy weapons on Hawaii. Can we ask what this anomaly we're looking at is? The seeming green lasers in the sky.
Are you a tracking? No. What are you? Photographs.
So is it like what's called LiDAR?
Is it LiDAR? What's LiDAR?
I think it's like they paint targets with lasers, or they like map out the terrain with the laser.
Do you map out the terrain with the lasers? Yes. Okay, let me ask Tesla. So what are they doing here? No, they're taking photographs. But that could be essentially one and the same, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And what purpose are they taking photographs? Like, who's taking photographs?
Who's taking photographs? Is that the US military? The US military.
Okay, what was their purpose for doing that on Hawaii?
For doing that. They're looking for changes. They're looking for, again, it's just monitoring any changes. See, they're doing this all technologically. Okay. It's not that humans are sitting behind a screen looking at, changes. the algorithms are picking up the changes. So it's again, it's a similar thing to what the Chinese are looking for. You know, are there any significant shifts or movements taking place? Have we seen anyone, you know, basically, are there any craters anywhere? Now, I know from, again, the readings that I've done from Hawaii, I've done a lot of readings out of Hawaii over the years. And I can tell you there's a lot of UFO activity out there too, a lot of
Mhm.
strange activity.
Yeah,
But this UFO activity? No, this is not UFO activity. This is surveillance mapping. Is it mapping? Are they trying to like build a map? They're taking photos.
interesting. Okay. Um, well, yeah, not to beat the point down, but I mean, I gotta go through these. So bringing Tesla again. So we have this building here, and again, this is a video that's taken from. So he does a 360 view. This building is absolutely like just melted on the inside, and but yet everything around it is like completely pristine. Like he goes in a 360-degree view of the whole street. Like all the other buildings are fine. Why would the heat only react with this building and not the other buildings? Is it's still just the material?
Why would the heat react to that building and not the other building? It's the percentage of metal.
Mm,
So whereas the percentage of metal for that building is very high, the other buildings, they don't seem to have that high of a percentage. So again, it's the heat, it's the absorption, it's the buckling, it's
mm,
the combusting.
okay.
It
Yeah, I
makes
guess
sense.
looking at this building, it is like a brick building, it looks like. The other one is all metal. So,
You know, as much as we all, you know, want to believe a lot of these theories, like
mhm.
what we're getting from Tesla makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and like this is why I'm doing the video because I want to know the truth,
Mm.
right? I mean, I know there's a lot of narratives out there, and like I've been, I've been paying attention to like kind of fringe knowledge for a long time, and there's been periods where it's like, especially in recent times, where it's just so extreme now, because it's actually, ever since the those sea years have happened, like a lot of people are a lot more polarized, I find, and it's like I can't. And I have to know that there's a lot of disinformation out there, whether that's coming from the people that want to misdirect you from the real things, like we found out last week that there are weather weapons, right? And hurricanes are controlled and steered, right? And then you have something like this where you would assume, okay, well, if that's real, then this must be real. But that's not the case necessarily.
Well, and with the big C word, right? Excuse me. I mean, the problem with that is the fact that we knew the origins. That was quite clear. Then it was the media that tried to control, and these social media platforms that try to control that information. And then loads of people got kicked offline, loads of people this, loads of people that. And then what happened was, in the end, it was true.
Yeah.
It was true. So, you know, who knows what to believe anymore?
Right, exactly. So that's why I want to go through some of these things and get like, a little bit more clarity because it's really hard to judge now, like way harder than it was before. So here's the last one, the last slide that I have, which is an anomaly. So it's hard to see this, but I should have probably got a better still photo of it. But it's a petrified frog, okay, in mid leap. Like it was jumping in the air, like, and it was frozen in mid leap, it looks like, from some sort of high energy blast, you would think. Can we ask Tesla what this was from the Lahaina fires, by the way.
Okay.
Can we ask him like what would cause this?
What would cause the frog to be, was it petrified? Is it petrified or mummified? I mean, is there,
I don't think they know. Like they're assuming that it's petrified, like it's
Is it petrified? I'm getting it's mummified.
Okay. Well, what does that
Um,
mean? Like it's preserved?
it's preserved. Yes, but whatever it was that it encountered, what did it? Why would it be mummified in this way? Like that. Now that's. Is that through the fires? I'm getting a no on the fires for that one.
Okay, so was this mummified at the time of the incident of the fires?
Was this mummified at the time of the incident? No.
Okay,
Was
so
it
this is
before that? Yeah, it was before that.
okay. So it's not something, so somebody is pretending that this is from the fires for that time.
Well, I mean, did they don't know. I don't get any bad feelings from this person holding it. I
You
think
just
they're just raising questions. I mean, they're not a scientific expert, a scientist
sure.
that could analyze and dissect. So it's good that they asked the question, but I
Can
feel like that specimen, how old is that? I feel like that specimen is a few years old.
so can we ask Tesla how it was mummified?
How was it mummified? It was basically where it was in where it passed. Did it pass away? Yes, it was passed away. Okay, this just brings up a point. So I don't know why it is with frogs, and it's probably with other similar animals as well. I don't know why they dry like that. Liz, how do you know that? Well, I'll tell you because we have a stream down at the back of our yard. And so at certain times of the year, there's a lot of activity with frogs, right? And with frogs, they like to leave their eggs in whatever water they can find. And when we have particularly heavy rains in the spring or early summer, we get like pools of water. Okay, so we'll in like plant pots and silly things like that, right? And they will put their eggs in like these plant pots of water or whatever it is, even if it's like a bucket or and and then a couple days later you'll see like tadpoles floating around in there, and it's just like, now what do we do? So we have to take the buckets and we go dump them down in the stream or the plant pots. I mean, we try to save them, but they're far from this stream and in terms of frog footage, right?
Hmm.
I don't know how far frogs travel every day. And when it's really hot here, because where I am, it can be very hot. I've seen dried frogs like this um, in my yard. Like
Hmm.
I've seen that. And
Okay.
and it's weird how it's just the way that they're made, how they dry like that. So let me ask Tesla, is this a similar because I've totally forgotten about this. And of course my kids will always, especially my older one, will always remind me, remember the dried frog that was in the yard? And I'm like, oh yeah, because it's disgusting and it smells too. And I'm saying, is this a similar thing that happened to this frog here? Yes. So it's something to do with frogs and their genetic makeup and their, the way that they're made, that they sort of dry out and they mummify like this.
Hmm. Okay. Well, that we can cross that off the list as an anomaly then.
I
So,
totally forgotten about it because it's not a nice image when you come across one of these. And of course, I'm like, I have to get my husband to come remove it because I'm not touching it and I don't want to go anywhere near it. And it smells so bad. And yeah, and he's just, he'll then put on a glove and grab it by its foot and dangle it in front of my face and make me scream. But
right.
I've seen that before. That's funny because I'd forgotten about that. And now I understand how these things, they dry out. It's something to do with their skin. But totally valid question. Could given the circumstances of the whole political, ins and outs of Hawaii, what's going on with property developers versus the people, the natural suspicion. A lot of Hawaiians don't even want to be under the government of the US. I mean, you've got all that too. So,
Yes, I guess my next question is that if there wasn't any directed energy weapons used to start the fires or contribute to the fires, was this a situation where, government was just taking advantage of a crisis in order to further the agenda of, rebuilding the land in the way they want?
That's a good question. Let's group Hawaii or that area as a whole. Were you taking advantage of a crisis in order to, and what are they going to do? Reconstruct it into the way that they wanted to? Yes, absolutely. That is correct.
And so one of those things, that was announced before the fires happened is they were going to make Hawaii or that area into a 15-minute city, which is, powered by artificial intelligence. So was this part of the plan, like to, this made it a lot easier for them now?
What does that make it a lot easier for you to create the 15-minute city powered by artificial intelligence? No, that's many years off, but certainly in the restructuring, they want to allow investors in. See, this is the problem. Okay, what I'm picking up on very strongly, I'm like, you dirty dogs. Okay, they're telling the people one thing, right? Like, oh, vote for us. We'll keep you safe. We'll protect you. We'll this, we're that. But on the other hand, they're cutting deals with all these investors and taking kickbacks, and there's a lot of corruption going on, right? So that these people can put their investment properties or hotels or Airbnbs, whatever it is, on the island because that's good for business. There's not a lot of business on the island that, so whereas jobs, it's hard to find jobs there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the government, they're playing right into the people's hands. They're on the one hand, they're saying, yes, we're going to protect you so we can get elected. But on the other hand, they're lining their pockets. So there's a lot of corruption going on there. And if this is a way to use it to their advantage, what I'm getting is, yes, they're going to use it to the fullest extent. And I'm saying, but aren't you even remotely upset over the amount of lives that were lost? And they're like, yes, of course we're upset. Some of them lost people in the fires. Right. But it's a chance to restructure. And what they just said to me, it's a chance to restructure and the government will pay for it. Meaning the federal government, not the local government.
Okay. All right. Now we did talk about the Pasadena fires a little bit. Can we just to clear things up, can we ask Tesla, and this is a picture again from the Pasadena fires, was there any directed energy weapons used in that fire?
Were there any directed energy weapons used on that fire? No. Were the wildfires in any way, shape, or form, whether Pasadena or Lahaina, was there any sort of weather weapon or any sort of weapon that was used to exacerbate or create those fires? I'm getting a no. Okay. This is going to be very unpopular with a lot of people that will, they have researched and listened and believed, and I get it, right? And then what happens is when you put out something that is contrary to what they fiercely believe, then you become the enemy. So this, I'm just okay. Bring on the hate comments because I know what's going to happen here.
Yes, no, I would also expect that as well. And it's just, that's wanted I want to do these videos because there are stuff that is legit, like we found with
Mhm.
the hurricanes being modified, and there's stuff that's not going to be like, not everything is going to be, like planned, right? Or, there's going to be an exotic technology being used. It's just, it's important to know what is and what isn't, right? So that we can actually, focus our energy on what's important. Because if we figure out that this one is important and this one's not, you have to kind of wonder, like, are we being misdirected on purpose away from the real thing,
Mhm.
what's really important? Can we ask if there's any sort of this might be really unpopular, if
Oh
there's any
no.
sort of well, how should I say, propaganda, or like, what's the word, controlled opposition, that's what I'm trying to say. Is there any sort of controlled opposition directing people's, attention towards this narrative?
Any sort of control position directing people. Absolutely. I mean, definitely they would rather you focus on these issues instead of the corruption in the government. Absolutely, yes.
And also other classified technologies that are real, right? So how it would work is they do have real things, like we learned about those weather weapons in the last video, that are real. They don't want you to know about those, so they're going to redirect your attention to things that, are just as extraordinary but are not real. And then that way they get to do what they're doing in the dark, and we're all our energy is focused over here. And so this is kind of why I like doing these videos, because I want to find out what is misdirection and what is the, the real deal. So look at it that way. Anybody that's, upset from this video, it's like, there are extraordinary things going on, but we have to be able to parse out the misdirection, because that's the only tool they have in the age of information.
And you know, and now we're having to go the bias and the misleading and the when all the media and the platforms, now you're having to go to a psychic medium to get the information, remote viewers to get the information. Yeah, it's
Right.
just, and that's why over the course, especially of the sea years that we just got through, that's why this type of information blew up, because nobody knows who to trust anymore. So now they're going to people like me to find the information. But then the other problem with that is there's loads of charlatans out there that are trying to put information out as well. And they're giving out a lot of misinformation as well. So a lot of times, a big question is, well, how come this channeler said this and this channeler said that? Well, it depends upon the channeler. Everybody is different.
It's
And there's
through their
different ways.
filter as well, right? It's going through
Well,
the filter of them too.
well, yes, you've got the filter, but it's where are they getting the information and where am I getting the information? Because I am a remote viewer, okay? Lots of hours, lots of years of training my brain to hit the targets of the information. When you have a channeler out there, or even not even a channeler, they're just a psychic, they're not even a medium, okay? A lot of times psychics have to use tools because they can't go directly to the source. And so they're just pulling the energy. Well, the energy could be a thought form, a collective thought form that believes that, for whatever reason, the conspiracy, it's a
Yeah,
conspiracy
you
theory
pick up
thought
on the
form.
narrative,
Right.
right? There's a narrative out there, and you could be tuning into the narrative that is a thought form.
Right. But because they're not remote viewers, they're not hitting the correct target. They're just pulling the information anywhere. And this is this, and this is that, and this is this, and this is that, right? They're not directing the information correctly. I'm not saying I'm 100% correct. No one is, because at the end of the day, I'm still a human. At the end of the day, I'm not God, right? So I don't have all of the information at my disposal. I still have to try and pull it and work around it. But this is why so many people come up with so many different ideas. So my thing is this: you have to use discernment, and love it or hate it, you have to. I would prefer, whenever I have to go and get information about my own life, I have to use a psychic medium. I would never just use a medium, and I would never just use a psychic. I would always go to a fully fledged, proven psychic medium. Okay. And another flaw in the system is where people are channeling one being to get all the answers for every single problem. That's also a bit of a flawed design. So it just depends. You have to know how to hit the target. And because I studied remote viewing for so many years, guys, I can't reiterate it enough how much I studied this stuff, how much I experimented, I data collected, I tested. This is years in the making. This isn't Liz woke up one day and suddenly she could do remote viewing. This is Liz woke up and decided to do remote viewing and spent a lot of time, a lot of energy,
And I think we did a great job today.
Okay, well, thank you so much. This was interesting. It really is. But I think that the ending deserves an explanation.
Yeah,
It does. Okay, well, thank you for this.
thank you, Liz.